Welcome to the channel, everybody. My name is James. Again, this is Knife Hand Customs. I am going to show you today how I make a simple Kydex sheath for the fixed blade knives that I've gotten into and I've started making. By no means a pro, but I've got a few tools that help out and make it pretty easy and give you a fairly clean result, a sellable result, which is the important part if you're hoping to make a few bucks. Getting into knife making. It takes quite a bit of time to get to that point though. But this video isn't about any of that stuff or the economics of knife making. I'm just going to show you really quick how I make a simple Kydex sheath. So stick around. Like most crafts or projects, you will need a few tools for the job. One of the things you'll need is a way to heat your Kydex. That can be accomplished with a household oven. It could be accomplished with a small toaster oven. There are really many ways to do that. From what I've seen, the working temp for a Kydex is around 365 degrees. If I'm wrong, correct me in the comments below. But I have the thermostat on my oven set to that range and around there, and it seems to work out okay. So I'll show you what I use here to make my Kydex sheaths. I have a pretty basic Black & Decker. It's like a commercial size toaster oven. That's what I use, and the sheets fit in there perfectly fine. A lot of guys will use a pan. I don't use the pan in there because I find sometimes it folds the Kydex too much and puts a shape on it when you're trying to get it out. So you drop it in there, set the oven for 365, let it warm up, and when you pop the Kydex in, it'll start to get to what's quote unquote referred to as the wet lasagna noodle. That's when you know it's workable. You can use, like I said, you can use a few things to do it, but that's what I use to heat my Kydex. And then we'll take a walk over here to the other side of the shop real quick and we're here. You're going to need some form of a Kydex press. This is one that I've crafted out of some floor tile foam, those garage foam panels, the floorings you see. You can pick them up at Lowe's, Home Depot, any of your big box stores or anything like that. I go 2 tiles thick to really mold the Kydex around around the knife. And then I've basically, give me 1 second here, I think these were 2x6s that I ripped down and slapped some hinges on them. But when I use pocket holes to stick the 2 boards together, so I mean, it couldn't get more crude and simple than that. So household oven, simple DIY Kydex press, and you're ready to really start heating and molding Kydex. Also, you're going to want to get yourself a couple clamps and have those close by, because you really want to get the Kydex in there as quickly as possible to minimize the cooling and its ability to mold around your knives. So let's get started and I'll show you how all this stuff works. Okay, first thing we need to do is we need to tape the blade. It does 2 things. It protects any of the finish that you have on there, and also creates a little space between the blade and the Kydex. If you do not tape your blade, when you mold the Kydex around the knife, you're going to find that there really isn't a whole lot of clearance, and it's too snug of a fit, and it's going to create some problems for you with drawing the knife. The tension's just going to be too high. So the amount of tape that you place on here will determine how snug of a fit that it's going to be. I always do at least 2. Most guys will do two pieces or 3 pieces on each side of the blade. I find that 2 works okay, but it also depends on the tape that you use. I pretty much stick to 3M products at this point. I don't really like any of the others. I've used many different types, so hashtag 3M for the win. So I'm going to put 2 pieces on this side. I'm going to cut it out very carefully, and then I'll put 2 pieces on that side, or sorry, the other side, and then she'll be ready. All right, so when you fold this over, really need to make sure that your blade is pushed, or the spine of the blade is pushed up towards this edge here as much as possible, if you're going to do it this way. And then I kind of just try to pull it tight up against the back side of the Kydex, because you don't want the knife or the spine of the knife to be sticking out towards the middle of the sheath, because it makes it a little trickier to work with after. Then just go ahead and clamp this puppy down, and I set a timer. Some people say like 12 minutes. I set a timer for 15 just to be safe, because it's only a couple extra minutes and you're 100% sure that the Kydex is cooled enough to be able to take out of the mold. So that's it. So we tape the knife, we measure the Kydex, cut it, heat it, about 365. It does not take long. It takes just a couple of minutes. And then we wait. We press it and we wait. So see you in a few. All right, it's been 15 minutes. Let's crack open the Kydex press and see how she looks. In my opinion, that's pretty much exactly what I'm shooting for. This is what I was talking about earlier, where I try to get the spine of the knife in there pretty close to this edge, and that leaves us plenty of room to go ahead and draw a design to shape this. This is one of the perks of doing it this way with the one-piece folding method, is that you only have to really use fasteners or anything on the one side, and then it gives you a nice place to mold a little thumb break in here. Thumb break probably isn't really the correct term, but I carried a drop leg holster for a long time, so it's kind of burned into my brain. So yeah, there we go. We're gonna go ahead now and trace out our pattern or design our sheath, and then we're going to cut it out and finish it up. These are 1/4 inch. You're probably not going to be able to pick them up. Maybe you can. These are 1/4 inch rivets. They come in a little baggie like this here. This is Kydex holster eyelets. It's from Holster Smith. You can buy them on Amazon. The stuff gets pretty expensive, but they're a little bit cheaper than these 2-part screws. They have a female and a male end, often referred to as Chicago screws. They have different applications, but you know, those are the two real choices, I'd say. But I'm going to go ahead and use the rivets for this. They're a little bit easier and will allow me to put on my clips the way that I need to. So one of the things I like to do, I picked this up from a gentleman's channel. It's called the Rivers Experience, I believe. I'll put a link to his channel in the description. He does a lot of really great stuff, knife making wise, but I just use the eyelet, or the rivet, if you will, as a guide. You can slide it along the blade. You can still see the blade in there. You can slide it along to make sure that you leave yourself enough space when you are drawing the outside edge. And so he'll just kind of, and I don't do it as quickly or as neatly as he does, but he'll just slide the rivet or eyelet down the edge of the knife, so that way you are 100% sure you are always keeping the same distance, or enough distance, if you will, with your outside edge. So if you do it this way using the eyelet, you'll never, or you theoretically will never be able to, or you'll never get too close. So what you don't want to happen is when you drill your hole and put your eyelet in, it's too close to your blade and gives you some problems. You don't want the blade going in the sheath and contacting any of your hardware or anything like that. So you probably can't see that on the camera. I'm not sure if you can. Well, you can a little bit with the glare. But we use the eyelet as a guide, and then we just go ahead and create our line. It's better to leave yourself too much material, although you do want it to be as clean as possible. But it's definitely better to leave more there than not enough, because you can't add it. You can take it away, but you can't add it. So then we're just going to come up here. This is going to get opened up. So you can kind of see what the shape of the holster, or sorry, the sheath will be. But then I'll just go back and double check the clearance and make sure that when I drill my holes, the knife won't contact the hardware inside. And this is probably a little bit too much, but like I said, I'd rather do too much than not enough. Now on to the next step. We're going to go ahead and drill our holes. I am sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I misspoke a second ago. Not a huge deal. The next step actually for us, instead of drilling our holes, is going to be to cut our sheath out. This knife is going to be carried in what's often referred to as a scout carry or horizontal carry. So small of the back, horizontal carry for a left-handed wearer. So we're going to go ahead and cut the sheath out, clean up the edges, and then I have these two 1-inch strips we're going to heat up, fold over, and rivet through for basically our belt hooks. We're going to craft up some of our own belt loops for this type of a carry. So let's get started and cut this out. Okay, so we've got our Kydex sheath cut out. It's pretty rough. We're going to take it over to the, you can see it here, my little sanding station. We're going to go ahead and take it to the sander. We're going to clean up these edges. Then we're going to heat and mold those straps and mount those up, and she'll be mostly complete. This is a 120 grit belt that I've used on other projects. So a lot of the burliness, if you will, has been taken down, so it's fairly smooth. So I'd estimate that it's somewhere around an actual 220 grit at this point, or a 240. So I use this to shape because it's a little bit better than using a regular 220. If you use a too fine of a grit at this speed, it sort of melts the plastic and doesn't do a really great job. So I'm going to go ahead and use this one to take it off quickly, and then we're going to finish with hand sanding from 220 to 400, and I usually will clean up the edges with up to like a 600 grit belt. So here we go. pretty well cleaned up, the rough stuff. You can see my original marks on there still, but before we go any further, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to test the fitment of the knife to see if we need to make any adjustments. All this stuff here will get heated with the heat gun and bent into place so that we get a nice fit, but let's check it out, see how it fits. So one quick tip that I've learned the hard way and also from a lot of other YouTube makers, go ahead and rinse this bad boy out before you start removing the tape on your knife and checking the fitment, or the fitting rather, whatever you want to call it. You have a lot of Kydex debris in there and it's going to scratch your finish, and it's also going to change the way that the knife fits. So we've cleaned it out. Sometimes I'll just spray it out with Windex. I don't have any running water here in the shop, but it's cleaned out pretty well, so we're going to check it out. Now is a good time to go ahead and remove the tape off your knife that we placed on there to create some space. Always have a little bit of a few stragglers. I don't worry too much on the finish on my knives at this point. They're pretty, I don't want to say crude, but it's like a rough stone wash. I think it looks great. Fits pretty nicely. So now it's kind of hard to check the tension because we haven't put any rivets in it yet or anything, but we know she fits, and once we rivet this closed, it should work out pretty well. Over to the rivets. I'm going to go ahead and apologize ahead of time for the camera angles. I realize they are not the best, but I'm not really set up for making videos in the shop, and I'm still working on the way that things are laid out. So this is a 1/8 inch bit. I believe it's 1/8 inches, 1/8 of an inch, I should say. I'm sorry. And I am going to be using 1/4 inch rivets, so we do have to step up to a 1/4 inch bits, but I like to use a nice smaller and sharper drill bit to go ahead and do some pilot holes. We have our pilot holes in there pretty cleanly. We'll go ahead and change out for our larger bit. I don't know if we can see that, but nice clean rivet holes. Well, they could be cleaner, but this gets the job done, and we'll clean it up after. Okay, so we have our sheath. We have our two, I keep calling them rivets, but they're not rivets, they're eyelets because you can see through them. So we have our sheath, we have our two eyelets, and then we have our little tool here, which is from Quick Clips Pro .us. You can see their mark in there. It's pretty simple jig. I like this one because the anvil part of it fits inside and helps keep everything lined up. So You set that in there. I've only used it a few times, so not fantastic with it. You set that in there, then you take your eyelet and you put it through your sheath, your material, and then you go ahead and there's a little lip on there, and you set the eyelet right on there, and you take your tool, slide it through, and it just keeps everything nice and lined up. But we'll just double check, and then you're just going to give it a couple little taparoos with the hammer. Some people use a press, some people, you know, are pretty vigorous with this. I like to go slow with it. Doesn't hurt to check. Not quite there, but close. Bob's your uncle. Nice riveted piece. We'll clean up the edges after, but we'll just go ahead and repeat that process on the other side. Pop the rivet in. Just double check best we can. Well, there you have it. Nice, fairly nice riveted Kydex sheath. Pretty simple, but works. Now we'll go ahead and heat up our straps, drill the holes in them, and we're going to use 2 of those fancy Chicago screws to hold it together. Alright, so plan B. I'm pretty sure we left off in the video with me heating the straps and riveting them on, or sorry, starting to screw them on at that point in this build. I'm going to move to a different method. Off camera, I was having a little bit of trouble with the thickness of the Kydex and the belt sliding through the loops. And then I realized that some of the ideas and the folks that do it that way that I was following, they are using vinyl. They're not using Kydex, they're using vinyl or leather. So what I'm going to do, at this point, we have this built. You saw how I did that. So what I'm going to do is just clean up the edges. I'm going to go ahead and hit it with the 400 and 600 grit sandpaper, and then I'm going to add a little more tension to this by heating it and closing it around the knife a little bit. And then we're going to move this build in the office. We're going to head home, take it to the home office, and I'm going to make those straps that you saw me trying to make earlier with the Kydex. I'm going to use some veggie tanned leather that I have, so I think it'll be kind of cool. So I will I'll go ahead and stain it and everything, and then we'll get it all put together, and I will show you the progress, or sorry, the finished product here in just a little bit. So stick with me. All right, so finished product. I've got the screws in there to be able to take this project on the road and to finish it up at home with the leather like we talked about. I'm going to go ahead now and it fits nicely, but I'm going to go ahead and take the heat gun, and we're going to, hopefully you can see this, this is usually where the tension is applied in the sheath, and it's a little bit loose, so I'm going to heat this up, and we're going to pinch her together and then mold up the thumb brake, and then it will basically be complete, minus taking it home and adding the leather straps for the scout type carry. But other than that, you know, you could call it done at this point if you wanted to throw a simple clip on there, but you know, simple isn't really how we do things. We like to do it the hard way around here. So we'll go ahead and heat it up, just basic heat gun, pinch it up a little bit, and then I'm going to remove the knife and set this part up, and we're going to call it good until the leather. Just want to be careful with this and take it slow. If you do it too quickly, you could mess up your mold. I like doing it with the knife in there, obviously. There we go. Give it a nice snug home. I usually have the opposite problem. They are usually way too tight. Dads unite. That's not going anywhere. Really excited about this so far. All right, I'm going to try to give it a little bit more, and then we're going to do the thumb break. Alright, here we are in the home shop. I am measuring and laying out the leather straps. Initially, like I said, I wanted to do the Kydex ones, but I didn't consider not having put a standoff in there, so there wasn't enough clearance for my belt. So I'm using a square to make sure they're nice and straight. I think I did about 1.5 inches wide on these. Got our straps cut out, and I'm just using a leatherworking hole punch to put the holes in for the eyelets. Then I'm using a nail punch to smooth out the inside of the holes so the Chicago screws can pass through the leather and the eyelets without an issue. So right now we're just checking out how it fits and making sure everything goes together nicely. I've marked the length of the strap for that front one and just cut it. I'm just using a pair of shears and kind of eyeballing the punches. It's not really a science on these. So just putting it together, making sure the length is correct, and then we do the second one, which obviously has to be longer considering that part of the knife is wider. Now that we have both of our straps cut and punched, we're just going to take it apart, I use the shears again to round off the edges a little bit so it doesn't look like a square strap, considering the sheath has got a pretty good contour to it. So just round off the edges again, just eyeballing it, and then fold it to do the other side to make sure that they match. Using a little burnishing tool to kind of round up the edges, make it look a little bit nicer. While you guys are watching me finish up this step that we've already talked about, I just wanted to take a second and thank you for watching the video this far. If you've enjoyed it, well, even if you disliked it, leave some feedback, give it a thumbs up, thumbs down, drop a comment below, let me know what you're working on and what you thought of the video. But if you could, and you'd like to, please subscribe to the video and click that notification bell so when I do more how-tos, you'll get notified. And here we're just sanding the edges a little bit with some 240 grit, a little scrap that I had lying around to make it a little bit cleaner and a little bit smoother. As you can see, we've got some dogs in the home, and it's a little tough to get stuff done sometimes in the quiet. But right now I'm just applying some dye, some leather dye to these strips that we've worked, and adding some color to them. Now I'm just going to apply some mink oil to the leather to condition it. I usually use some actual leatherworking conditioner for this type of stuff, but can't seem to find it in my little toolbox there, so mink oil it is. But it works out pretty nicely. Just put it on there and make sure you condition the back of it as well, and let it sit for a minute and then just kind of buff it off. Alright, everything's finished. Time to assemble it and see what the finished product looks like finally. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video. I really do appreciate you sticking around this long if you have. And again, please consider subscribing to the channel and hit that thumbs up button. That's it. We'll talk to you soon. We'll see you in the next build, folks.